Okay, got a lot of text here. We got Tom Garrett coming up, but let's start with Dan in Virginia Beach. Dan, you're on the air. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network.
Hey, John. Good to talk to you again. Hey, look, I want people to really ponder something and get a grip in their mind about who do you think writes all the legislation that Congress passes?
Lobbyists.
They don't write it. They don't write any of it. So who do they represent?
Lobbyists, the moneyed interest.
They represent corporations, the banksters, the insurance companies. We don't really have representative government anymore.
Right.
And like I mentioned to you a few months ago, just look at the money.
Right.
$60 million in lobbying in 1986, $3.1 billion today. They own that town. They don't represent us. No matter what side of the aisle you're on, no matter what your views are politically, you do not have representation in Washington. They don't care about you. You're a worker bee, go buy their products, pay your taxes, and let them spend the money. Mm-hmm. That's your job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and by the way, Dan,
people have to let that penetrate their mind. They have to understand what situation we're really in.
I appreciate
the chance to say that, John.
I want you to give the lobbying money in Congress again, right? We've said this on the air numerous times. Give that number again.
$60 million in 1986 in lobbying, $113,000 per legislator. In 2016, it was $3.1 billion or $5.8 million per legislator. Let that sink in, man. They've bought that town. They own it.
Sure. You look at what
we have to. I mean, if you sat them senators down and put them under oath and say, who's writing the legislation? Who wrote that legislation? Who's your? I mean, they're just glorified salesmen for the globalist entities.
Yep.
On either side of the aisle, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
It's a uniparty. It's a one-party town. It's a company town.
It's not the Republican Party or the Democrat.
Big problems, and we got to wake up. We got to become citizens and patriots again. We got to be willing to die on a hill and save the country.
It's the Green Party, baby.
I appreciate your show, John. Keep up the good work.
Well, Dan, the man, thank you. In Washington, D.C., you'll go up there, you find out one thing, cash is king. You know what? The only thing you had to know was this, and I talked about this a week ago. All the disasters going on right now in the government and America and wars and all this stuff going on. And Sheldon Adelson's lobbyist writes a bill that, Charlie Dent in Pennsylvania slips in, didn't write it, of course, the lobbyist bill, right? Sheldon Adelman, the guy that owns the Las Vegas Sands, worth billions of dollars, owns some other casino entities around the Caribbean or wherever it is, billions of dollars, slips in this bill, inappropriate, just slips it in, right, under everybody's radar screen, an amendment in order to outlaw online gambling in the United States. Which, who cares, right? Nobody's talking about this. Everybody could care less. But Adelman gives money to the Republican Senate committee, gives a bunch of money to Paul Ryan, gives it to McConnell. They have a lobbyist. They slip this in. Dent carries it. Nobody cares. I'm the only person in the United States that brought it up. And what is it aimed against? Somebody in Virginia that might bet $5 to win on the Kentucky Derby at Twin Spires. You have got to be kidding me. It's the money, right? He gives the money. Their lobbyists write the bills. Tom Garrett, Republican, 5th District, Virginia, not beholden to anybody, a breath of fresh air. Congressman, good to have you, sir.
Yeah, it's a grand experiment, John. I've drawn 7 opponents so far for next year. They've raised a combined total in the last period of over $600,000. I've raised $28,000. I take exception with your good caller, Dan, with whom I agree on almost everything. There are people here trying to do this the right way. I'm about to stick the biggest needle I can find in the insurance industry's eye at about 2 o'clock today at a press conference. When you have United Healthcare stock that if you'd bought $100 worth prior to Obamacare would be worth $580 right now, or as of last time I looked, then we understand what happened. President Obama sold the country down the river in exchange for big corporate money. Republican leadership doesn't have the courage to stand up to big corporate money. Obamacare has been very, very successful for one entity, and that is the insurance industry, whose profits have multiplied many-fold. And it seems like there's a lot of members up here who are more concerned with disenfranchising managed health care plans than they are disenfranchising their own citizens. I didn't candidly care for the tone that President Trump struck, not because I disagree with him. I actually do agree with him, but because this isn't over. We had dozens and dozens of votes, literally, for a full repeal with an extended sunset, which would then force everyone to the table to decide if and what we wanted to do from a federal government level as it related to health care. And every single Republican here voted yes when the namesake of the bill was sitting in the Oval Office with a veto pen, and we can't get that bill out right now. What does that tell you? That tells you that there are a whole bunch of people who are willing to act tough. It was the political equivalent of standing behind your friends, screaming at the bully that you're lucky they're holding me back. And I'm not here to get reelected. I'm here to do what the heck I said I was going to do. And I'm not alone, and I get frustrated when I hear folks like Sean Hannity or Dan, both of whom I like, say nobody up there cares. Some of us do. Okay, but I hadn't spent $5.8 billion in any of the six races a million, which is the per legislator number, in any of the six races I've won, including one of the, I think, 10 most expensive in Virginia Senate history. We got outspent last year, and we took a district that usually goes 0.5 or 5 points plus Republican and won by 17. We outperformed President Trump in that district by 6 or 7 because I think people are ready for somebody that'll tell them the truth and then stand up and do what they said they were going to do instead of finding excuses why they can't. And so, you know what? I've never had a job in my life, and I hope I never do, where it was more important to keep the job than it was to do what I said I was going to do and do what I thought was right. And so I'll stand up later on today beside folks like Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan, and we have a solution that will allow the media, if they choose to do their job, and the voters, if they exercise diligence, to figure out just who the Republicans, and I air quote that, were, who said they wanted to repeal, who are fighting their butts off to keep us from having a chance to keep our word right now, right? So when President Trump says we need to elect more Republicans, no, we need to elect more Republicans who'll keep their word. We need to ask people to tell us the truth on the front end, and then we need to keep a close eye on them and see if they did. Sorry, rant over.
It's great. So let's get to your press release today at 2 o'clock. When is your office going to put something out on that?
Probably about 2 o'clock.
All right. Am I going to get like, here's what it is because I'm out of town today?
You want the scoop? You want the scoop?
Yes, now. Go ahead.
There's a procedural way for us to bring this bill to a vote, regardless of what leadership wants us to do. Now, they can work to block it, but if they work to block it, then I guess we'll know where their hearts lie.
Right.
What we want is the opportunity for all the tough guys who said, yes, we plan to repeal, and then we can look at actually what works for America and not for big insurance, to do what they said they were going to do, okay? The only Republicans here who haven't voted for a clean repeal are the freshmen. But all these folks that we sent back that voted for it again and again and again when they knew it was a physical impossibility to get it across the desk of the man after whom it was named, Obamacare repeal, they should be held to account. The Republican Party isn't broken, but a lot of the people in it are. And, you know, the real problem is we got good bipartisan legislation that'll never sniff the floor. Let's talk about concealed carry, reciprocity, and that sort of thing, because the people who have the levers of power won't let it get a committee hearing. And if it doesn't get a committee hearing, it can't get voted on. Well, it doesn't get voted on because cowards are afraid that what they said to their voters might be different than their actions. We are descended from a people who pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor, not once, but again and again. In the Revolution, during the American Civil War, during the Civil Rights Movement, people stood up and did what was right, knowing they might die. Dr. King did die. Abraham Lincoln did die. Countless patriots did die. And we've devolved into a political class of people who aren't willing to do what they think is right because they're afraid they won't get reelected. Somebody needs to spare me. I'll tell you, the most indispensable person is the person who realizes they're not indispensable. The 5th District of Virginia existed before I got to it. It's going to exist after I leave it. And so during the brief period of time that I have stewardship, if I look you in the eyes and say, I'm going to try to do X, Y, or Z, I'm going to try to do X, Y, or Z. And there are other people here like this. Candidly, on both sides of the aisle, they just disagree on what's right. But we have had, and I tell you, I have a hard time separating myself from Tom Garrett, the citizen, and becoming Tom Garrett, the legislator. We have had so many people tell us what they're going to do and then not try to do it. I'm not frustrated with the system because the system is the worst system in the world except for all the others, to paraphrase Churchill.
Right.
I'm frustrated with the people in it. I'm frustrated with the prioritization.
So let's start with the U.S. Senate, because right now the problem isn't in the House with a clean repeal of Obamacare, which is now the backup plan. Let's just repeal it with a sunset, as you say. And 2 years have been proposed. That's should be enough time, 2-year period, to figure it out, right? It's not like 2 months, 2 years. I mean, if anybody ran a business and said, we're doing something, we're going to stop doing it, and then give me a plan in 24 months, they'd be laughed at. Okay, but 2 years seems like a good time. The problem, though, is...
Look, the Democrats, if Donald Trump cured cancer, Charles Schumer and Nancy Pelosi would hold a press conference the next day talking about how many researchers he put out of work.
Right.
But if you want bipartisanship, if you want everybody at the table, dual repeal with the sunset.
Right.
There'll be some people, I think, who perhaps rightly assert that the federal government doesn't need an extensive role in the health care decisions of Americans.
Right.
There'll be others that fight for single payer.
Right.
But at least we'll have the fight.
Right.
Because the one thing we know to a metaphysical certainty, the one thing that President Obama admitted, that the Democrat governor of Minnesota admitted, is that this thing's broken and it needs to be fixed. The Democrat position is no changes at all. Trump says, we're not going to own this. Well, we don't, except when 4/5 of the fourth estate, when 4/5 of the press are focused on nonsensical issues, like Russian interference in the U.S. election, which doesn't even hold a candle to U.S. interference in the 2014 Israeli election, where they broke the law, but the individual in charge of breaking the law lost his emails, right, if you believe that. I can't go home to my district and find somebody who might ever vote for me in a million years who's like, what are we going to do about Russia, right? The Ukrainians did more as a state actor, it's been proven, than the Russians, and the Democrats won't whisper a word of it. The Democrats cry that their server was hacked, but they won't let the FBI have access to investigate it. That strikes me as an either-or proposition. Either you're upset about it and want it investigated, or else you did something wrong and you don't want anybody to know, right? Everything that was leaked was true.
Right.
The only thing that the state apparatus of the Russian media did, Russia Today, was tell the truth about things that were inconvenient for the Democrats, like their own anti-Semitism, like their own racism, like their own duplicity in pushing down Bernie Sanders, who candidly should have been the nominee if the people had a choice. But no, they have superdelegates, right?
Right.
I mean, the super elite, there's a reason that Karen Handel in Georgia 6 got outspent 2-1, that Ossoff in a losing effort spent $250+ per vote.
Mm-hmm.
Republicans never dream of hearing that, but tell me the last time they heard a story about how much more big institutional and globalist corporate money gets spent on Democrat candidates. Mm-hmm. It happens all the time. Donald Trump got outspent by a massive figure. Mm-hmm. Right? The corporate money is in the Democrat Party. They tell people how much they care about them, and then they do things to hold them down and to perpetuate their own power. Having said that, nobody in the Republican Party wants to message. And if we don't message, then the American people will begin to tell the big lie, or begin to believe the big lie that they're told again and again and again by the left and the mainstream media. I'm here to fight because what we have is the best there is in the world, and you got two choices. You can fight or you can quit, and I'm not ready to quit just yet.
So you got 3 senators in the U.S. Senate that say they're going to vote no for repealing Obamacare. 2 of them voted, as you say, for the Obamacare repeal when it didn't matter, the what we call showboat vote. That's Senators Lisa Murkowski from Alaska and Capito from West Virginia. I've said this all day. You got to give Susan Collins here a pass in Maine, because on the first repeal that she knew was going to get vetoed, again, she voted no. So at least she's consistent. So you have your press conference.
I don't mind somebody who disagrees with me on the issues and then tells the truth.
Right. She's been consistent. I have no problem. Right. I don't agree with Collins, but I have no problem.
It's the ones, like you said, who cast the show vote.
Like Capito. A perfect example. She voted for the repeal. I'm not going to
name names, but God bless you for doing it.
Well, look, I don't have colleagues, okay? So you have colleagues, and I understand that.
Yeah, my point would be this. The reason that Trump did so well and the reason that Bernie Sanders did so well is the American people are sick and tired of being lied to, right? Now, people in Maine might want a senator who does what their senator did, and if so, then that's how the system works.
Right. That's fine.
But what we don't want, what no one wants, is an elected official who says one thing and then goes and does another when the rubber hits the road.
So let me just play this out. I've got about a minute and a half just so we understand it. So right now, Leader McConnell is going to have the repeal vote in the Senate, he said, around Tuesday, which I agree with. It's going to go down, and it's going to go down with 3 Republicans voting the other way. So it's going to go down 51-49, because then the other Republicans, even if they would have voted for a repeal, they'll hide behind the 3 that came out. Right? We all know how this game works. So that goes down. Now,
that's right. And what we're trying to do, I'm sorry for interrupting. I know you got a limited time. What we're trying to do is make sure the House members have the same opportunity to either tell the truth or not. I haven't heard, and I'm not attacking leadership except for the fact that we deserve the right to go on record to prove to the American people that we meant what we said. And so then you figure out who said something and didn't mean it, and then we act in the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November 2018.
Can I ask one question on that process? Why is it different if the Senate would have voted it down, and then the House has a vote knowing the Senate's already voted repeal down? Why wouldn't that be just another show vote? That has no root in reality.
I'm trying to get this thing out along with my colleagues who actually believe in telling the truth before the Senate, so that the Senate vote actually means something.
Before the Senate. Okay, that would be the key.
That's what,
before the
time
Senate.
is of the essence.
Even though, in reality, it's really a show vote again and not real, because they know it's going down to defeat in the Senate, just like they knew Obama was going to veto it, Tom. So what's the difference?
Put some pressure on these people, they might grow a backbone. I can't think of anything else to do.
It's not going to happen.
But for us not even to take a vote, for us not even to,
you should take a vote. But what I'm saying, what I'm saying, Congressman, you're going to take a vote, but it's going to be the same thing, because those voting for repeal, they know it gets to the Senate, it's dead. Just like they know it got to Obama's desk, it's dead. So there's really no change. I get what you're doing.
No, the big change, John, is that if it gets to the Senate and dies, Republicans killed it. If it got to Obama's desk and died, Democrats killed it. And if we let the true colors of the individuals who won't keep their word be shown, then we have a chance, at least moving forward, for the voters to take action.
How soon
can?
Okay, I'm sold.
If the Senate kills it with Republican defectors, then we know who the bad guys are.
I'm sold. How do you get this around leadership to the floor?
So there's a tactic called a discharge petition, wherein if more than 50% of the members will move to discharge a bill, it goes straight to the floor. Okay. Anyone who won't sign the discharge petition has essentially voted against full repeal with a sunset to replace. So the vote might be who signs the discharge petition and who doesn't. But anyone who's not willing to put their name on something that says we want to vote on a clean repeal, those are the people that don't want a clean repeal.
When are you going to move this
now,
down?
Again, your show will actually read between the lines and do analysis and say this is what this means. Will the rest of the Fourth Estate, again, abdicate their responsibility to inform the public and allow them to reach conclusions on their own? I don't know.
No, they would rather...
I've got two choices. I can try or not.
They would rather talk about the Diet Coke that President Trump had with Vladimir Putin at the G20 couples-only dinner. They'd rather talk about that. You know what? Don't even get me started. I'm out of time. Thanks for fighting for us, Tom. Thank you.
I'm going to keep on, and if we lose, then I'll go do something else. But I'm going to stand here and do what I think's best for America.
All right, I'm in. I'm all in, Tom. Thank you. Tom Garrett, Republican Congressman, 5th District, Virginia. More information, garrett.house.gov.